Hello, let me give you an overview of dealing with users and groups. This resource management deals with that concept, and that is a concept that most people are unfamiliar with until you actually get to work. Now, the cool thing is the ability to deal with users and groups is built into pretty much any operating system today. And it's definitely built into Windows. The same technology that you have right there at your fingertips on your own computer is what they're using on the servers, except of course it's more robust. But conceptually, it's the same thing. So I'm going to right click the start button here, and what you can do is you can go to a few of these options, but we're going to take a look at computer management. Computer management gives you the ability to look at a few different things. Now, what you see on your screen is basically the Microsoft Management Console. They call it the MMC, and it can be configured to show different things. So this interface is used a lot to show a lot of different things. However, in Windows, when you have just your local Windows installed, this is pretty much what you get. But you can see the task scheduler and the event viewer. That event viewer is, you get there from the task manager and you can get into the events that way. But you can also get to performance monitor here. And, a lot of stuff. This thing is not going away. So we'll click on it and then make it disappear. And device manager, which we've looked at before in this class, it's all there. And look, there's disk management. You can also get to that too. What we want to look at is local users and groups. So local users and groups has a couple of folders in it. One is users and one is groups. And we can, just click that and it'll bring that down a little, and we can click on users and we can see who the users are. Now, I know that this is kind of tiny for everyone to see. Microsoft likes to make these things very tiny. But anything with a little down arrow on it means it is not being used. Let me say that better. Anything with a down arrow on it means it's inactive. You actually can't log in with guest. You can't log in with DWAG utility account. Those are actually been downed. You would have to okay them. You'd have to right click on them and you would have to go to your properties and you'd have to turn it on. Right? Account disabled. Not disabled, disabled, not disabled, right? I'm going to cancel it because you don't want the guest account enabled. But here's me. There's me that I'm logging in, and I created another admin account right there, EAC. So I created that, and there's the default administrator, which often has been downed, and I have that turned on. So I have the passwords to all three of these that I can get into. Now, my James McBride account is not an admin. As I say in other classes, and I should say in this class most firmly, that when you create an account on your system, you should have an admin account that you know the admin password to, and then your account should be a standard user. And the reason why it should be a standard user is in case you get a virus, the virus will then run as you. That's what happens. And if you're an admin, it can get into all sorts of stuff where if you're just a standard user, it'll help you out. So I'm actually going to create a user here. So I'm just going to right click and hit new user, and I'm going to call them test. And the full name is test 1. And the description is, this is a test. Do you need the description? No, you don't. Can't spell. And then give it a password, which is going to be capital T, test 1. Capital T, test 1. That's what it is. Now, I can force this user that when they log in, they actually have to change their password. And that's what I mean, that this is set up just like it would be on the server. If you created a new user on a server, this is what you would do on the server. And quite normally, you would say, make them change it. Right, so they'd have a default one when they first logged in, and that would just be on a piece of paper that everybody gets when they start work, like EAC password or something like that. Ours is not that way, by the way. And you would just give that to them, and then they would have to change it. Immediately, they'd have to change it as soon as they logged in. Or you can say, no, they don't have to change it. And guess what? The user can't change it. I'm not going to let them change it. And I'm going to say that it can never expire. It'll always be there. And then, of course, I could say the account's disabled. So even though I set all this up, I can say this is disabled. Now, the reason why you would do that is because a server admin, there are user admins, they are admins of users, and they would actually maybe every single week go through the process of creating new users. And some of the people aren't even there. They're not going to be there for the next 2 weeks. They just got hired. Their start date's not for a month, whatever. And they could go through and create all this and then just say it's disabled. And then when the person shows up, they can go ahead and enable it. That's a lot more secure. So we'll disable it. That way, just in case I forget about this, it's still disabled. Notice that when I hit create, it gave me a blank screen and said, let's do another, just like it would on the server. So there's test. So I'm going to go ahead and right click. I can set the password from there. I can delete it, rename it, but let me see all the properties. So the properties will have, and of course, on a server, you'll have a lot more than this, but you got this general information that I just filled out. And then what are they a member of? They automatically puts them in the users group. So I can actually add a group here and say, and I will just go ahead and say, can you check that and find it? And they're like, no, I can't find that. So let's type it all out. Can you find that one? Oh yeah, there's administrators. Now what it did was basically say, you are this computer, EAC-SEC-01. So if you're EAC-SEC-01, then this is a local account. If this was a domain, then it would be a domain account, which is other stuff. So this is saying on this computer, it's a local account. Now, when you're dealing with Windows, the most restrictive applies, meaning the administrators are not as restricted as the users are. So if I allow this to continue the way it is, it will apply the user as being the most restrictive. So I can actually get rid of that now that I've got another one, and get rid of it and say you're just an admin. And then profiles we're not getting into. That is some server stuff that's pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and okay that. That's how users work. Now let me show you groups. Over under groups, we have a bunch of them. These are default groups that Windows creates. Backup operators, device owners, guests. What they've tried to do is say, we know what the general populace is going to use, so here it is. And when I say that, I mean on servers, right? So on a standard computer system, you're using this, right? You're using users and you're using administrators. And that's all you're using on that system. You can do this in the VM so that you don't mess up anything in your own Windows 10. And you can actually see, come in here, and I'm going to create a new group. And this will be R&D, research and development. And I could type that in. And then there's nobody in it. I could just say create and be done. But instead, I'm going to say add. And I'm going to say, do you have test in here? Is test located here? Oh, test is. Of course he is. I just created him. So we'll go ahead and create that. And now if I go back to users over here and take a look at test, say, show me the properties of that, we will see that it's a member of R&D. And I could actually take them out of the admin account now. And now they're just a member of R&D. And the reason for doing that is because, yeah, on your own computer, it's not that big of a deal. You're going to have maybe 3 or 4 users if you had a bunch of people using it. But on a server, you're going to have hundreds and thousands. And so you don't want to go and apply security just to a bunch of users. Instead, you would think about what are they doing? And then you would create a group and you'd put any user that fits R&D into that group. Like what they're doing on a daily basis fits R&D. I'm putting them in that group. Then you can actually apply the security to the group, right? I can come in here and I can go to my R&D here and let's see what the properties are, right? This is it right here. And you can now say, well, on my system, I'm not going to let R&D into this folder, or I am going to let R&D in and nobody else. So if we come over here to folders, let me show you, this is the other thing that they're doing in the class in this chapter. So let me go into downloads. That's a very safe place to do this kind of work in. And I'm going to create a new folder. And I'm going to call that R&D. There it is. Now I can right click on it and I can go to properties, and I can go to security, and right here, right, system is allowed to do whatever it wants. Again, you know, if you are part of the system, that's actually a group that I can't add to, then they get to do whatever they want to this folder. Administrators, they get to do whatever they want. And guess what? I created the folder, so I get to do whatever I want. So let me go ahead and add in somebody. And who we're going to add is R&D. Is that what I called it? Or is it just RD? I can't remember. Check names. No, can't find it. What did I call that, guys? There it is. So it's RD, Research and Development. So I'm going to add in this group. Notice it's got two heads and it's R&D. And now I can say, you know what? All as they can do is read. They're only going to be able to read. Any user that logs into this computer, reading is all they get to do. They don't get to do anything else. And I want to state that this really is what people call full control, where they have all these check marks. Once you get to modify, that means you can pretty much do anything you want to in that folder. Full control means I can now modify what I see on this screen. That's not something you want to give out. So lots of times people think, oh, full control, that means they can do whatever they want to in the folder. No, it means they can do whatever they want to in the folder and come in and change your security. In other words, they could lock you out of it if they want to. So I'm going to take that off. And that's really how that shows up. You create these groups, and then you apply the security to the group instead of the user. And again, not such a big deal on a personal system, but I tell students all the time, you want to see what it's like to actually do this on a server. It's right in Windows, because yeah, you've got some different screens that are added to it, but it's the same basic principle that you're going through. And so I'm going to actually go and delete all this now. So I'm going to actually remove R&D from there. We'll go ahead and apply it and okay it. We'll okay that. And I'm going to delete it. So we'll shift delete, permanently delete that. Sure. I don't need R&D there. You don't need to be causing yourself any kinds of security issues that you may not be aware of later. It doesn't even matter if what I'm doing here, it should be fine, right? It should be no problem at all. It's just not something you want to do. That's why it's a lot nicer to actually do this in a VM where you're not really too concerned about it, right? So R&D won't be able to be deleted until we get rid of our test person here. So let's go ahead and delete test. Now we can go delete the group, because test was part of that group, and it's going to say, hey, dude, you got this person in there and they don't have anywhere to go, basically. Hey, sure, you want to do that? It's got a unique identifier. You might screw something up, right? You don't want to be messing with anything they have defaultly put in, or you could end up very surprised at what you can no longer do. So again, best to do it in a VM, although I was not. So if you got any questions, let me know, and take